Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Robert Allen, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Class 1, Kim Owen. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Edwin Robert Allen. Edwin Allen was born on the 28th of September 1872 in Toowoomba, Queensland. Known as Bob, he was one of 10 children born to ironmonger Robert Allen and his wife Margaret. Bob received his education at the local state school and later won a scholarship to study at Toowoomba Grammar School. He graduated in 1890 and began work as a shop assistant in his father's hardware store. 3 years later, he married a Mary Ann Sewell. The couple welcomed their first son, Robert, in November 1895. Bob and Mary Ann went on to have a further 4 children. Bob worked as a secretary at the local hospital, and at the outbreak of the First World War in 1914, he was working as a labourer. Bob Allen enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 25th of August 1915, aged almost 43, and with 5 children at home. He was allocated to the 8th Reinforcement of the 25th Battalion and commenced a short period of training in Australia. He embarked for active service in January the following year, sailing from Brisbane on board the troop ship Kyra. After several weeks at sea, Private Allen arrived in Egypt. He spent time training alongside other new recruits before embarking for the Western Front in March 1916. Allen arrived in the French city of Marseille at the end of the month and was immediately sent north to Étaples, a port city on the French coast. He was temporarily attached to the newly formed 1st Anzac Entrenchment Battalion and was given time to continue training and to gain exposure to frontline conditions. Over the weeks that followed, he and his comrades worked together on maintenance and construction tasks in the camps and undertook engineering works close to the front lines. Private Allen was not long with the entrenching unit before the Battle of the Somme created demand for reinforcements. Allen was returned to his original unit, the 25th Battalion, in July 1916. He entered the front lines on the 28th of July 1916, where his battalion was preparing to attack under the cover of darkness. The men began their advance just after midnight, tasked with taking 2 lines of German trenches on the Pozieres Ridge. They jumped the parapets in waves, coming under murderous machine gun fire from enemy lines. As they pressed forward, Allen and his comrades were hit by enemy artillery and mortar fire as they reached their first objective. By the time they made it to the second trench, the battalion was so outnumbered and it was forced to dig in for cover. Private Herbert Harris, who was also caught in the fighting at Pozieres, described the battle. Imagine men dug in a few feet into the ground and shells just falling like rain. Trenches blown up and men digging for dear life to rebuild them, or rescuing their comrades who were buried, and in most cases, the rescuers were also buried by shells. When entering the trenches, we were bombarded with tear and gas shells, which made us wear our gas helmets. It is almost impossible to see and hard to breathe. I have heard officers and men say that the landing and the Lone Pine battle at Gallipoli were a picnic compared to this last fight. Shortly after, the battalion received orders to retreat to its own lines. By the following morning, the 25th Battalion had suffered some 340 casualties. Among the dead was Private Bob Allen. No trace of his grave was found for several years. It was not until 1936 that Allen's remains were discovered as part of an ongoing attempts to locate the missing. His remains were exhumed and reburied nearby at Sacre Military Cemetery, Collincamps. Private Bob Allen was 43 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Edwin Robert Allen, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.